Group Chief Marketing Officer at HSBC. But before I get into that, I do want to give a note to our sponsor, The Economist, a growing global circulation and a reputation for insightful analysis and perspective on every aspect of the world's events. It's one of the most widely recognized, trusted, and well-read current affairs publications in the world. The Economist views CMOs as playing a pivotal role in how businesses respond to the transformation around us, which is why they are placing CMOs in the spotlight this week. Thank you to The Economist. And thank you, Leanne. It's so great to see your face again.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I think we want to start off with the incredible journey of transformation that HSBC has been on. And when you arrived in April of 2017, and I mean, this is a huge journey. It was a beginning and it's still in place. Tell us what it's like to lead during transformation.
Well, thank you, Dana. It's a delight to be here. Look, in early 2018, HSBC, we began a global refresh of our brand identity, because we know that successful brands need to be true to their DNA, their original values and heritage, but also to be fresh for modern audiences and customer needs. So we started off by completely overhauling the visual identity. We have an amazing and distinctive asset with our red hexagon. I'm in brand colours today. It's an iconic logo and it's recognisable way beyond financial services. So we created a suite of local and global hexagons. We also launched our brand promise, Together We Thrive, which outlines our commitment to creating prosperity in the communities that we serve. And with our creative media partners, we've now developed asset libraries that work on any screen at any scale, from bite-sized content to stories about our customers, HSBC's point of view on the world as open and connected. We are the global international bank. We've overhauled our famous airport creative. We've launched a sound identity in collaboration with Jean-Michel Jarre. So we've done a lot, and I'm really proud of what the team have been able to deliver. It's been an amazing experience to be part of that. And so what's it like to lead through that? And I was reflecting on this, and I think there are kind of three things that stand out for me. The first one has been around kind of the concept of what's loose and what's tight, especially on a global brand. And we've had to keep recalibrating that. And that's been super helpful because we've been having to be really clear about what we're preserving, those few distinctive brand assets like our hexagon or our colour, our tone of voice, but then allow a lot more local flexibility on other areas. HSBC is a very diverse place. We're in over 60 markets, 40 million customers, 144 languages at last count. So provide that freedom in a framework has been really important. That's the first thing I've learned through leading this transformation. And that leads me to the second point, which has been reinforced for me around this local culture, because I think that great creative takes its lead from culture, from those local communities, either taking a point of view that cuts across that culture or swims with it in a really distinctive and memorable way. For example, in the UK, we took a point of view that stated, like, you are not an island, which took a point of view across culture at that moment. Whereas in Malaysia, actually, we swimming with the culture. Malaysians are incredibly proud of the different diversity of the nation and swimming with that culture and being open and connected to the world. So it's really been important that those local voices have been able to be heard. And thirdly, I think the other thing I've learned is that we had to keep prioritizing. I mean, there's so many choices you can make in a transformation, and sequencing those has been really important. And because there's always limited resources, right? People, time and money. And we've had to kind of flex that a lot in response. And whether, say, a mobile digital journey in Mexico isn't ready, we've had to kind of pivot. So reprioritizing constantly has really been the third lesson I've learned in leading through this transformation. And finally, I'd say I have a strengths-based view of leadership. And by that, I mean that the best gift that I can give my team is to focus on the strengths of the team, bring those to the table and help them to harness theirs so we are stronger together. Because I think diversity is a property of the group rather than the property of any one individual.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. The last time we talked, we referenced a conversation you had with your husband a long time ago about the importance of taking on a challenging job. Why? Tell us why it's important to do that.
Yes. Well, yeah, exactly. My husband told me a long time ago that you don't build a legacy taking the comfortable jobs. That really stuck with me. So it really helped me to, and why? Because it helped me to kind of create, I guess, my kind of 3 power questions about any prospective role. Because is that role going to be strategically significant? Is it going to matter to the bottom line, to the customer? Secondly, what am I going to learn from? Is it a new team? Is it a new industry? Is it potentially a new country? And finally, how will I leave the business and the team better than when I walked in the door? So I really encourage anybody, listening today to kind of come up with their own kind of power questions that's going to help them kind of frame what kind of challenge they want in their next kind of role, because whether that's role inside an organisation or outside the organisation. Because I think the pace of change is such now that it does require us to keep kind of learning, unlearning, kind of learning again. And therefore, to be resilient, to be adaptive is what's going to be required of us in the future. So I do think it is important to kind of have that kind of whatever frame you have of reference to say what is a challenging job. And so I've taken that one to heart.
Right before this call, our call, somebody from our past called and said they had taken a job that was smaller and perhaps not as challenging. And guess what? They're bored now. Mm-hmm. And so just think of, the disruption of having to get a job, learn it, and then go, oh, there's not enough there, versus a job that has a lot more for you to chew on and learn and move ahead with.
That's right. Yeah. A lot of learning. You need to have a lot of learning headroom.
What has the experiencing of COVID-19 taught you as a person and as a leader in a global organization? Because it's having a huge impact on all of us, and I'm sure all of the people viewing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, our priority throughout COVID-19 has been and continues to be, firstly, our customers and also our colleagues during what has been a really incredibly challenging time. I'm really proud to be part of a team and a company that's been able to sort of pivot so quickly to those changing customer circumstances, whether that was actually moving, obviously, the majority of our customer-facing staff to working from home, or implementing something like a mortgage repayment holiday, all the way through to making phone calls to vulnerable customers just to check that they're okay. And like everyone else, we've done more virtual and digital engagement with customers in the past 3 months than we've done in the past 3 years. So, processes that needed to be done in person with signatures can now be done online. One of our marketing team built and deployed a chatbot over a weekend in order to respond to a huge spike in inquiries on one platform and be able to help move them and redirect customers to the right platform. Responding quickly, often overnight, to support government schemes in various countries that help customers with their financial concerns. So look, as an organisation, we now know that we can change much faster, and that's something we want to keep. And working from home, look, if anyone had any doubt that it could be done in almost any job, well, that's over. But I'm also very aware that COVID is not an equaliser. It's affected people very differently around the world, and especially those with caring responsibilities. And we've needed to keep a very careful and kind of like, supporting eye on that. And look, as marketers within HSBC, productivity actually hasn't been the issue, but creativity is something that we've worked really hard to sustain. And both WPP and PhD have been great partners in that. So shout out to our core creative and media partners here, because we've been able to sustain that creativity and move at a speed that we never thought possible. And again, something we want to keep. Like early on in some of our early work that we're creating some global assets for use and locally tailored, having to use stock imagery, we did that first, but that was really complicated. And actually then we started to work much more with independent freelance filmmakers to gather kind of original content, but do it really safely. And that actually helped to also provide work for people who were also struggling. So it's allowed us to be much more inventive and innovative. But also COVID's allowed us to engage directly with customers in much more of kind of what I would call a virtual live way, because there's lots more opportunities to do so, even with our business corporate experience with our business-to-business marketing. That acceleration of adoption from our customers has meant that we've been able to scale and amplify things in a way that we never even thought was capable before. So I think it's interesting that we've learned, actually, as marketers, that actually we were right about a lot of these trends that we've seen gathering momentum, about the migration to digital channels, especially mobile. The fact that, that there are omni-channel experiences. Customers' lives aren't linear. They're moving between offline, online, all the world. They want both a bit of virtual and they want the right kind of live experience. It's that combination of what is live, what is virtual. We knew that, but we've been able to really, I think, be far more empathetic about what is live, what is more digital. And then I think the other one too is also things like, how health and wealth are also inextricably linked. We knew that. Those trends, those opportunities, those challenges, we've been addressing, but I think now they've just been amplified to such an extent and accelerated. So the so what of that for me is that I think we can even be even more ambitious about asking for resources, whether those are people, time and money, to sustain that change. And why? Because it's better for our customers and it's better for our businesses. It's better for our colleagues, actually. We can now be more personal and relevant at scale. And that, I think, is a really interesting learning. And finally, for me, kind of personally, firstly, I'd say the importance of boundaries, like working at home, like many other people with other family members, my husband and my daughter, all competing for space and good Wi-Fi. Zoom exhaustion, anybody? Create the space, take frequent breaks, get some physical exercise. I'm locked down here at the moment in East London. So I run in the back streets and in the park early in the morning to give me energy for all the Zoom calls. Of course, I still need good coffee. So I've got a regular supply of really good coffee from some local suppliers. And I've definitely learned I still need that.
When we were talking about this about a year ago, I was doing a session with a company that was facing change, and I had done a lot of work about what the future of work would be like. And at the time, it was interesting to include in the conversation, but we're living it now. The idea of working with largely groups and individuals that you meet with digitally but not personally, the importance of inspiring them and trying to intervene when necessary. So I think there's been a lot of surprise in what we are able to do that we didn't think we could do before. So I think it's interesting. You said you had a mantra during COVID that helped your teams respond to their clients' needs so they would do their best job, and it was called the 3 R's. Can you tell us what they are?
Yes. So very early on, we said, right, we need a framework here to help not just ourselves, but also the rest of the organisation and our colleagues particularly as well. So the 3 R's for us is react, respond, and rebuild. And I'm sure many people on the call today will have a similar kind of one. I'd love to hear more actually about that. And that's actually really been very helpful because we know that each market's going through the stages of COVID in very different ways. But also, they're often going into react to respond, maybe back to react a little bit. And being a global organisation, we've been able to then help and support each other, provide the right kind of both, again, digital platforms, but also reach out to a lot of our colleagues to say, where are you at in those 3 R's? And how did you manage that particular part of the cycle? So that's really helped us to also create the kind of right tone, the right approach, and to learn very quickly and to pass that learning on rather than having to kind of redo or duplicate all of that learning. So yes, we've paused a lot of the work, as you would expect, but at the same time, we've been able to, as we've talked about, be able to pivot very quickly to do that kind of much more meaningful, very quick work to be able to support our customers. And also, again, with our agency partners. So it was a framework that helped us internally kind of sequence and coordinate our work, get best practice really quickly, work with our partners at WPP and PhD in particular. And then actually internally as well, once we applied that, it helped us to direct investment choices. So it became a much easier way for us to explain then where we're spending our investment and also how we're making sure that we can also then I have enough money left at the right time for Respond and also for Rebuild as we come through this, and the responsibility, of course, to rebuild in certain areas once we come out of the different phases. We want to make sure we had enough fuel in the tank as we come out through the crisis. So that those 3 R's have been something that we found incredibly helpful, both going as we go through it, but also as we think about coming out the other side.
Last September, I was fortunate enough to come and attend your marketing meeting in London and to speak. And one of the things that, because I got to be there, I was able to be a participant in the agility training, which I found fascinating. And after the training of the people in the tent, which was a big tent, was over, there were several people who had already gone through this training and said they would never go back to the old way of working. Can you talk about this a little bit, about changing something that used to be what made you competitive, how you worked, the caution, everything, and now you're changing it. How is that working?
Well, yes. Well, our move to an agile way of working has been it's been a hugely transformative process. It's been a big commitment. You saw part of that when you were with us last year. It was a big commitment from all of us, myself included, across all the community, the time, the energy to actually re-engineer the way that we work, to avoid so many of what we call the ta-da moments where something's almost completely finished before it's shared with anybody. But if there's any issues, we need to kind of go back and keep doing rework. So we've really shifted that because it's been allowed us to be much more reactive and actually, frankly, quite efficient. And just back to what we're talking about in terms of COVID, I don't think we would have been as fast and has such high quality if we hadn't actually had that experience of re-engineering our workflows and our work patterns over the last 12 months and moving much more to an agile way of working. Because when we had those ways of working in place, we could very quickly assemble globally diverse teams with one common goal and have a move to that kind of positive outcome at a really incredible pace. As I mentioned, things being built in days that would have taken us weeks or months, turning around the kind of content, getting through the approval process within the organisation, which I know for everybody can often be quite challenging, and in a bank it's even more so. That having reworked and re-engineered a lot of that already meant that we could actually then step into some of these needs and meet our customers' needs much faster. It's also meant we're much more efficient now in terms of a budget because we've been doing a lot more test and learn. So therefore, we avoid having to commit a lot of work and then kind of cross our fingers and hope. We've actually done a lot more testing, a lot more iteration. And I'm sure this way of working will be familiar to many people on the call. What we've done is that we've said that this has become so important that we're actually going to spend more and more time and energy doing that re-engineering and also working on ourselves as leaders and how in leading through that change and really being involved early on in the process. We even heard in the last speaker again about that being involved with briefing, being involved really up front. So we're getting much further up that kind of value piece, that value chain. So for our colleagues now, that kind of marketing community, they're now getting experiences working much more cross-discipline, cross-business, cross-geography, and often cross-bank. So the feedback has been, people are saying it's really hard, but it's been overwhelmingly positive. And I believe it's actually part of the future set of skills that any marketer will need to have. Yeah. And we've taken it on ourselves actually to kind of be a pioneer for this within the organisation, and it's been so successful. It's something now that's being rolled out more widely now across the bank.
It was fascinating for me as a participant because I was at a table of 10, cross-functional. At the beginning, they said we were going to create a plan by the end of the day. And I was like, yeah, sure. And we did. We actually did. But you do feel that learning, because they would blow the whistle or say, your time's up. You have one more minute to finish up this conversation. And you want to go, no, I need more time. But no, you have to play the game. So we're going to go. Some people have been sending in some questions. Can I ask you some of them?
Sure.
Okay. The banking industry has typically been quite safe with its use of creativity. How are you trying to push the envelope?
Well, I think that comes back to what we were talking about before about where does kind of really good that pushing that creative envelope, where does good creative come from? And I do think it comes from that point around really understanding what is the kind of cultural view. So are you going to take a point of view that cuts across culture? Because that's when I think that tension, it's that point of creative tension where we get some really exciting ideas. So we've done that within, with HSBC, as I mentioned, say whether it's in the UK or most recently in Australia, in Malaysia, in Mexico, by being able to understand our kind of the local cultural nuance about what it means to be HSBC, an international bank that's open and connected to the world. What does it actually mean within that local context? And those tensions, being able to develop those and express those, I think is where we've been able to find some really, really interesting kind of creative both source material, but also it's something that is true to the brand as well as true to that local culture. And that's where I think you get something that you can amplify and really resonates. And also I think for us, it's been able to as a way to tap into colleague pride as well. That's what we've also seen.
What's the challenge of channeling a consistent voice in this dividing political world? How do you solve it?
Well, I think it comes back to said, being true to the values of your organisation. For us, that's about being said open and connected and dependable. And now that's our role. Our role's been for 150 years around connecting communities. And so for us, that's been very much around being able to finding those things that we can still. We are by definition a really diverse organisation. We have been, for so long. We cover 90% of the world's trade flows. So by definition, that's kind of in our DNA. So we do want to reflect the diversity of our customers and the communities that we serve. And so I think that, that's why I think it's great to have that kind of global framework that really resonates with your distinctive brand assets, but then also has some kind of local nuance to it. And that's where I think you do get the best of both. And you can also reflect, I think, and still be true to who you are as an overall organisation.
Well, this next question is related. Have you ever had conflicts between your values and the brand's values, the moral values of you as a person and your industry?
Well, I think, I think for me, so my role as a CMO, we talked about what's important to me as a leader is that I do believe that there's a kind of like a holy trinity of marketing that the marketing team kind of exists to identify compelling customer insights that leverage your distinctive brand assets to drive business growth. So I see my role as a CMO to ensure that we're paying kind of sufficient attention to each of those three things. And I think, underpinning all of that, I said, is the values of the organisation. And I'm fortunate, to work for an organisation, and I have chosen to work with organisations throughout my career that have a point of view around being able to support communities, helping them to thrive in some way. And therefore, I see my role within those organisations to be able to help bring that to the forefront. And so I do think brands actually help customers kind of navigate the world. They actually matter even more. To help people make decisions. So therefore, for me, in terms of that, there's always tensions, I think, in all industries to make sure how are we making sure that we provide the right kind of products and services. And that's why I think the marketing community is such an important part of any organisation, because our role in developing that customer insight is that we're able to. I think it is our special responsibility. If we do that well, then we help our organisations design and develop products and services that customers really need, and therefore that's the way that I reconcile that. I'm able to work within, to be able to be supported by the values of the company, but also I see as my responsibility is to help the organisation design things that customers want, and that's where I think you can help to actually be far more intentional to be able to display the values of the company that you're working for.
In our last 40 seconds, when do you anticipate marketing and messaging to pivot back to what it was pre-COVID?
Right. Well, I'd say two things. One, I don't. I think this is actually a real reset moment. It's a reset moment for our role as marketers, as guardians of our brands, for our teams, for our organisations. I think it's going to be fascinating, actually, to be at the centre of all of that. And to lead for that change within our organisations, because we want to build stronger brands. We want to be useful and relevant to our customers. We want to foster creativity. We want to deepen those customer relationships. We want to contribute to the communities that we serve. So I think that actually, I want to take this as an opportunity for the marketing community to do the things that they do well, to amplify what they do well. And to be helpful and useful and relevant for the communities that they serve.
That's great. Thank you, Leanne, very much. Leanne Cutts from HSBC, and again, The Economist, for sponsoring this portion. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye.